Gronk, a Godzilla movie marathon where we're stomping through Godzilla's filmography. I'm Derek, and I've seen all the Godzilla movies.
And I'm Doug, and I've seen 2 Godzilla movies.
Ooh, and we're talking about the immediate, very immediate, direct sequel to the original Godzilla, Godzilla Raids Again.
Yeah.
Also known as Godzilla no Gyukyushu, which translates to Godzilla's counterattack, which probably makes about as much sense as Godzilla Raids Again, and also known as Gigantis, the fire monster.
Stumbled across that, didn't look any further, because I knew we would talk about it.
We will have a conversation about that. This movie was released in Japan on April 24th, 1955, 6 months after the original movie's release.
Unbelievable.
I think you can tell when you watch it, but
I think you can tell, but we'll get into it.
It'll be a conversation. Yeah. This movie was directed by Motoyoshi Oda, produced and co-created, of course, by Tomoyuki Tanaka, who's still working on this. Story by Shigeru Kayama, with a screenplay again by Takeo Murata, but this time with another writing credit alongside him, Shigeki Hidaka. Special effects by Eiji Tsuburaya, and the score by Masaru Sato. A lot of those names are not the same as the first Godzilla movie. We'll talk about them and why that is. But before we get into that, we're talking about Godzilla Raids Again.
Yeah.
There's plenty to talk about background-wise. I'm just curious, big picture.
Yeah.
Doug, what's your grand thought about this movie coming out of it?
Wow, what's my thesis? No, I enjoyed it. It was very clear that this was made more quickly, or at least very shortly after. I think even if I didn't see the year being just simply the next year, I probably would have suspected that it was a pretty quick sequel. But I actually think there's a lot about it that's really compelling, both artistically and just the story that it's telling.
Okay.
And then there's some other stuff that's very different from the first one that I'm bummed is different from the first one with regards to special effects or just the way certain things are shot. So it's kind of a little bit of everything on this one. I'm
glad you're kind of I know, you will have thoughts, but I generally seem to be kind of positive about it. Cause this is my least favorite Godzilla movie, I think.
Oh, wow.
And here's my thing. I'd only seen the movie once before the podcast, and I watched it on the Criterion Collection set. And I was like, I think this movie's so boring, and I love the movie so much. I love the first movie so much, and then I get to this one, and I'm like, this movie is everything I don't. Everything I liked about the first movie that I was happy that it wasn't this movie kind of is it just feels way more like a typical, just a B movie, and so when we were doing this podcast, I was going into it really hoping I'm going to revisit this. I know what I'm getting myself into this time. And I'm going to look at it more critically and excited to have a conversation about it. So going into it, really hoping that I could sort of reevaluate it. And there are things that I really do like and appreciate about this movie, and some interesting decisions that it makes, and where it's, and I think it is very interesting where it stands as a sequel to the first Godzilla, and sort of the first swing to figuring out how you even sequelize that movie at all,
Yeah.
But
oh yeah.
And that's the stuff that I find most interesting about it. So I have plenty of positive things to say about it, but at the end of the day, I still come out of it checking my watch, a little bit bored, and just don't really I have no interest in ever watching this movie ever again.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing is I think that there are a lot of movies, and I'm not even saying that it's maybe the objectively worst Godzilla movie. I just think there's a lot of other movies that every other movie has something I think just more interesting about it than this movie, whether it's more entertaining or goofier or has a different take or something. This movie, I think it's just it just kind of tries to do a lot of what the first movie did, but worse. And the things that it does differently are things that I'm just not into. That's my grand universal take of this movie, unfortunately.
Sure. No, I get that. And I think that the stuff that I suspect will stay with me about this movie are primarily visual, which I think speaks to kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I think the movie overall feels certainly less dense or less, like there's less to dig into with this one by a long shot.
Yeah.
But there are some visual things and some mood things that I do think will really stick with me. I don't know how intentional some of those things were versus just the resources they were working with, but there are definitely things in this that I found very cool and striking.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to come out of the end of this podcast episode more positive on it and maybe
Sure.
more appreciative of stuff. I think it's like this movie, getting into the background of it, like I feel validated when I read about it, because it really is just sort of your typical, like the most typical, like same as Hollywood, where it's like a movie studio is like, ooh, we want the money, 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 money.
Yeah.
Artistic integrity be damned. This thing did well. Make another goddamn picture that's the same thing. We don't give a shit what you do. Just make it, and make it now. Strike while the iron is hot. And that's basically what it was. Toho is like, Godzilla's popular. Hey, Tanaka, this was a great idea, dude. You got 6 months. Make another movie. And it's like, all right. Like, it was literal weeks after the first movie opened that they had to start production on this movie.
And
that
it
genuinely was rushed.
It shows in like the lowest lows of the movie, right? Like, I think the high highs of the movie are visually striking moments, and I think the low lows are we just literally used parts of the last movie, or we just looped this scene over and over again. Yep. Like, that's where it became really obvious to me that, like, yeah, this didn't take that long. Yeah. And quote from Ishiro Honda, who was not involved in this movie, when I think he was asked about an interview, years later, he said, "Believe it or not, we had no plans for a sequel and naively hoped that the end of Godzilla was going to coincide with the end of nuclear testing." You sweet man. Oh, he has such a big heart. I love him so much. Too pure for this world. He was busy directing Love Tide, which makes sense. Started production on this weeks after the movie opened. Of course, he's going to be working on another project. He's a working director. So he was busy. The studio is like, we're not going to wait for him, so we'll just get another director on board. So that's how we kind of end up getting this sort of rearranged team of people working creatively on this movie, literally just because I think of the speed at which it needed to be made. So the director of this movie, Motoyoshi Oda, he was a contemporary of Honda. He was a contemporary of Kurosawa, working at Toho. It sort of makes sense why he's in that realm. I think what's interesting about him, a couple of things are really interesting about him. This is the only kaiju movie he ever directs. He doesn't do any after this. I am pleased by that statement.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I think his direction is kind of probably the worst thing about this movie. I think there's all the things that are interesting are not attributed to him. And I don't mean to knock on the guy, but I think that he was simply the wrong choice for this movie. There's a quote from a book from 2010, I think, A Critical History and Filmography of Toho's Godzilla series, that asserts that Oda was this type of director that was content with accepting B picture level assignments, which I love B movies. I'm not against that, but the author, David Kalat's sort of thesis about it was sort of like, if you put a guy like that in charge of a Godzilla sequel, it's kind of a clear signal of intent that it was meant to be a quickie profit center, not an artistic indulgence. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if Oda was just kind of like, was sort of intentionally like, I'm here to do what Toho's asking me to do, which is make this movie quickly. And again, I think that's just sort of clear because it does just feel like a typical B movie. It does not have the flair and the sort of horror angle and the heart really that Honda's directing, I think, does in the first movie.
I don't know, Derek. Flares are a really important part of this movie. So
wow,
just telling lies on the podcast.
A+. I will say the other two new people, I don't think it's to a lesser, their impact on this is to a lesser extent, or in that I should say that their negative impact on it is to a lesser extent, I guess I should say. Because one of the screenwriters, Murata is from the first movie, and the other credited screenwriter, Shigeki Hidaka, he was just like, I think was just brought on, like I think was a pretty young writer at the time, literally just brought on to help Murata write the story more quickly because it was so rushed. So I don't think that there's any issues there. Any writing complaints that we might have about the script, I think is literally just because of how rushed it all was.
Sure.
Composer-wise, Masaru Sato, that's an interesting one because he is a very different composer than Ifukube was, but he is one that ends up doing a lot of Godzilla movie scores going forward. And it's just so, because I do think that Ifukube's score in the first movie, I like it a lot more than this one. I do think Sato's score is more like Western influenced. Like I think he's in, like, it is more of an action movie score than Ifukube's was.
It didn't stand out to me. So I think that checks out.
Yeah. I think and I will say in his defense, this movie is more of an action movie than a horror movie. So I think like doing a more Western influence action score, it makes sense, you know?
Yeah. A lot of the stuff when I talk about mood doesn't actually have to do with the music. It often has to do with when there is no or very minimal music.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, it's, you know, he came with a pedigree too. He'd worked on a bunch of Kurosawa movies. He worked on a bunch of Toho films. It again makes sense why he's involved in this. I'm not exactly sure why Ifukube didn't come back. I don't know if it was also because he was busy or because he only wanted to work with Honda on it or something or what. But either way, this is kind of the B team working on this movie, you know?
Sure.
Which again, it feels like the most typical story of a sequel, you know?
Sure.
Another thing I think worth talking about it'll come up when we talk about the movie plot, but since we're talking about people involved, Tsuburaya did the special effects on the first movie. He's still the director of special effects in this movie, but you might notice that some of the special effects aren't really up to par with the first movie in some really particular ways. The biggest thing is like the weird speed that Godzilla and Anguirus fight at.
It's my least favorite part of this movie. There's plenty of stuff that isn't necessarily great or that doesn't shine in this movie or that really like you could kind of cut out and slim things down. But truly my least favorite thing is how fast these two monsters move. It drives me a little bit crazy.
Yep. And it's this is the only time you're ever going to see that on a Godzilla movie.
Thank God.
I think that's
beautiful music to my ears.
Yeah, I mean, I think like as silly as it is because it's like it's a special effect, but like obviously special effects and the monsters themselves are so important to kaiju movies. Yeah. I think that also is probably part of the reason why this is one of my least favorites because it's like I don't super love the human story in this one, and like the monster stuff, like it kind of looks, aside from some very striking images a couple of times, most of the monster stuff looks like ass, like in this movie, unfortunately. Like despite the characters themselves being cool and I think acting being good, it is literally like that hyper speed. It just breaks it, man.
Well, and it's such a bummer because there are moments even in those fights that are hyper sped up that would have been cool if they were treated differently, like if the speed wasn't what it was, some of those moments could have shined. A lot of the destruction still really hit for me based on what this movie is and the first of the series kind that this movie is. So like those things still hit for me, but it kept taking me out anytime we were doing like a big focus shot on the two monsters just punching each other in the gut at light speed.
Yeah. So in everyone's defense on this movie, it was a mistake. That was not an intentional choice.
Whoa, basically, tell me more. That's a wild thing I'm learning.
Yeah. So like, I think we talked about it in the last episode, but like Tsuburaya, one of his big strategies with making a monster look gargantuan is by overcranking the film, right? That means recording the monster's movement at an extra fast speed. So then when the film was run at normal speed, they would appear to like be moving sort of abnormally slowly, which then in turn gives the effect of gargantuan, something colossal moving slowly.
Yes.
That's
that weightiness,
Yeah. The problem is that I think it was like one person on one of the units, I think there's like 3 if I'm remembering correctly, I think there's like 3 cameras set up to record the monster fights. And one of those 3 cameras, they did the exact opposite. They accidentally undercranked the film.
I was wondering, because I was like, how did it end up looking like this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, and so annoying.
Yeah. And I've read
it wasn't a creative choice, honestly. Like, that actually provides me some comfort, I guess. Because if it were somebody being like, oh, wouldn't it look cool if they look like this? I think I would have just hated that person.
Yeah, I'd be like, no, you're literally wrong.
It absolutely doesn't look cool. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. And I've read a couple of things, like sometimes there's some places that are sort of like, on Super I saw it and was like, this is so interesting how surreal it looks, so let's keep it. But then there's other things that I find more believable, that it's more like, we literally don't have time or money to reshoot this, so we've got to keep it. And I think that the latter is more true, probably.
I would think so.
Especially given that, like, this isn't, to my memory, unless I'm wildly misremembering something, to my memory, the undercranking is never used ever again. Like that weird speed is never used ever again, which I think implies that it's sort of like, it doesn't really work for this, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I knew that was going to be a thing that would come up regardless. It just sort of made sense in the production stuff, because it's more a part of the production than it is like the actual content of the movie itself, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that kind of blew my mind a little bit. That is just an accident.
I know. What
wow.
Massive, wild accident, you know? And it's like, and it's so funny too, because it also speaks to the time period, because it's like, if something wrong like that happened nowadays, like, guess what? You just put it on your computer and slow it down or something, or like stretch out the frame. I don't know. There's some ways that you can make it work, but it's sort of like, if you filmed it, you've got the film. Like, what are you going to do with that? You know, like you can't change it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Wow. Yeah. But speaking of, you know, special effects and monsters.
Yeah.
We got 2 monsters in this movie.
We do. And Derek, can I tell you how surprised I was that the very second movie, like only 2 movies into this series, they already did monster versus monster. It's kind of actually genius.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the genius happened so quickly in the series, like, really shocked me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first ever like kaiju on kaiju battle in movies, and it is sort of like, if you think about Godzilla not as a franchise, but as this is a sequel to one movie that's come out, it's like, well, how do you amp it up, right? How do you go the next level from the movie? How do you up the stakes? Instead of one Godzilla, there's another creature like Godzilla. Like it's so obvious when you think about it, but I think that when you know Godzilla is like a 70-year franchise, you just expect that it's sort of like, well, there's a few before that happens and then something changes. But like, no, it does make sense that it's your sequel, you make it bigger, you know.
Well, and there's so many examples of that obvious choice not happening, right? I was just listening to some folks talk about the Chucky movies, and one of the things that was a problem there is that, like, let's capitalize on the cool thing we just did, and then like they didn't do some of the obvious stuff that you might do to amp it up. They just kind of recreated it. Or there's like the Hangover example where they just made the same movie again as the sequel. You know what I mean? So I really was surprised that it changed so quickly, if only because of all those types of examples. Like, if you're trying to capitalize on the success of the thing you just made, I think the safe choice is to just kind of remake the thing you just made. So in that sense, this movie's a bit of a blessing, as flawed as it is.
I do agree with that. I think that's a major, huge point in this movie's favor, that I think that they did very intentionally try to pivot in a different direction. Like, I think that the idea behind this movie, again, as much as this was more of a product of like a corporation trying to churn a movie out really quickly, I do think the big artistic kernel at the core of it is that it is kind of like the Aliens to Alien, or like the Terminator 2 to Terminator. Yeah, it's just sort of like, we have this horror movie, let's make a more actiony sequel that just has more monster stuff in it, you know? Yeah. And I don't think it's as successful as Terminator 2 or Aliens is, but the fact that the attempt that's their idea, I think is very, very, very clever. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If for no other reason than just that, it would be impossible to call this movie forgettable.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not forgettable. I definitely would never argue that. And it's very like important to the history of the franchise and the franchise and kaiju movies in general, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about the last big thing before we just jump into the movie and everything.
Sure.
Like Godzilla and Anguirus themselves, like their designs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is the second ever Godzilla suit. They did it's very obvious, but they did remake another Godzilla suit. Mm-hmm. This is the Gyakushu Goji suit. Gyakushu, just the Japanese word for counterattack. That's why it's called that. Mm-hmm. And it's basically just like, it's like a slimmer version of the original Godzilla suit. It's got like a smaller head. It's got a really long neck. What do you think of this guy?
It's weird because I feel like in some ways it looks better and in other ways it looks worse. So it's got like kind of some things really going for it. I do think, it's sort of easier to see, if that makes any sort of sense. Like, I think some of the changes they made make elements of the suit more distinct and easier to sort of parse out. But I think some of those things end up making it a less cool Godzilla design for me, right? Like, slimming down Godzilla is never going to be something I think looks cooler than, like, making him more massive and gargantuan, right? So, you know, there are things about it that I thought looked neat and other things where I'm like, I can't wait until we have a higher quality film or have color to distinguish some of these details and characteristics, because we're relying on stuff I don't like to add more detail and more distinct visuals.
Yeah. I think like I think the main reason why it is slimmer at all is just because he has to fight another creature in this movie. They have to make him more flexible. Like, there's the first movie I think we talked about, it's like 220 pounds. Like, obviously he wouldn't be able to do a battle sequence, so they're making something that he can move around in and jump around in and roll around in. And at this point in time, the only way they can do that is by making a slimmer suit. That's a little bit later. I think he does, like, the skin on the suit feels more like a suit than the first one because he has to be able to move around in it, you know? So like, and I have a lot of space for that because they're still figuring this stuff out.
Well, sure.
But it does make for like a design that like, I don't love. And I do think it's interesting that like, it also depends on the angle for this suit. Like, I feel like some angles it looks cool, but there's like, I'm going to send you an image that they use for the official like soundtrack release that they did.
Yeah.
It's just a close up and it's like front facing Simpsons. It's like you should never see this Godzilla directly like straight on because he looks so goofy.
It's
straight
upsetting.
On.
Yeah, it's not good. It is interesting. I mean, honestly, it's weird to think about these earliest suits. Like you said, they're still figuring it out, right? So like at the time there was no like, what is a quintessential Godzilla? You know, even though there are so many different designs, I feel like with that many designs, any given person can be like, this is how I like my Godzilla designs. That didn't exist. It's like number 2, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I do agree with you. There are some angles, and I would say this about the first one too. There are some angles where it looks cool as hell, and some angles where you're like, I see your googly eyes. Like, you know?
Yeah. Although this one has like movable eyes. Like, I thought I forgot about that.
That shocked me. I was like, holy shit, those eyes just moved. I had to rewind it to make sure like my brain wasn't just like filling in what I thought was happening. Yeah, that was really, really unbelievable. Like, genuinely.
It looked like that was sort of like, there's your big technical breakthrough, I think.
Yeah.
Like, just, I mean, because it's not a full-on animatronic, but it's like going in that direction, right? Like, I think they just had to put a battery in the head or something and just, you know, remote control the eyes moving back and forth, which is very simple now, but like at the time, it's like it really does. Yeah, it shocks you when you first see it.
Yeah.
Like, that dude fucking is looking around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a really cool moment.
Yeah. I also think it is very funny now listening back to the first episode where I'm sort of like, I don't think they use the hand puppet again. I don't think they use it again in Raids again. And then you watch this movie and it's like all hand puppets, like hand puppets up the walls. Like, oops, all hand puppets.
They use it a lot.
Yeah. I think that one of the things about the suit that I was reading is that like it he couldn't open his mouth up very wide. So literally anytime he had to use his atomic breath in this movie, it has to be the hand puppet, which I don't think was the case in the first movie.
And the thing with the hand puppet, honestly, like I think the only thing that bothers me about the hand puppet in this movie is just that it's so obviously a hand puppet. And if you can kind of imagine what it's meant to look like, it's actually pretty cool because it does allow him to open his mouth so wide in sort of like a weird, unnatural, monstrous way. It's just the puppet doesn't really represent the idea, like the cool, horrific idea of it all. It's a hand puppet, you know?
Yeah. The way his like teeth like protrude out of his mouth and stuff. It's so funny. I love it because it's just so silly, but it is one of those things where it's like I'm waiting for the point when you've figured this out and moved past this to something better, you know. But yeah, I definitely it is endearing to see it. Very cute, weirdly cute sometimes.
Look, I love a puppet. Okay,
yeah.
So
who doesn't love a puppet? Who doesn't love a puppet? You know, and you know, it's the ingenuity of it is always fun. Figuring out how to work around their stuff. I will say I do think that Anguirus, I think that his design's really cool in this movie and looks really neat.
Yeah, I was surprised at how good Anguirus looks. One, I didn't know Anguirus at all. This is not a monster I knew about or knew
that's
of.
Exciting.
So one, I was really excited that there was an Ankylosaurus-inspired monster because that is my favorite dinosaur. There's a part of me, because it's my favorite dinosaur, that wished it looked a little bit more like an Ankylosaurus, but then it wouldn't be a cool kaiju monster. You know what I mean? So, like, I get it. I was impressed, though, because as, like, a quadruped monster that is clearly a man in a suit, it actually looks pretty impressive, I would say, most of the time. There are times where you're sort of like, oh, that looks like a man just sort of, like, standing funny.
Sure.
It works surprisingly well as a monster that walks on all fours. I was impressed by that. I don't know if it's because of the weight of the shell or what, but like something about it manages to hide the fact that it's a dude on his hands and knees. yeah. I think, I mean, there's some anime style poses that Anguirus does in this movie sometimes during the fight, like that are kind of blinking or missing. And it's just like, that's so fucking cool. I think a lot of it is the acting. Like it's Katsumi Tezuka, who is Anguirus in this, the suit actor. And I didn't mention him in the last one, but he actually also did like film some of the scenes in the Godzilla suit in the first movie as well. Okay.
Like he split it with Nakajima. Nakajima becomes like much more like the more primary Godzilla actor, like going forward. But Tezuka, like, you know, will occasionally pop up as in a co-credit with him as Godzilla in future movies, and he does other kaiju. Okay. But I think this is his first time doing because this is only the second ever kaiju movie, so of course this is his first ever time doing a kaiju that isn't Godzilla. But it is got to be such a big ask, right? Like, hey, I know these suits are hard to work in, playing a monster, and now you're gonna be on your knees the whole time. Yeah. It
makes me all the more upset that they fucked up the speed thing because when he does end up sort of like needing to lunge on two legs and sort of like attack Godzilla where Godzilla stands, just imagine how cool that would have looked at the proper speed and with the proper weight, right? Because like the effort that it would have looked like Anguirus was making to like match Godzilla would have felt so much weightier and so much more significant if they hadn't screwed up the speed.
I know. And it ends up feeling like he like it shouldn't be this case, but it almost feels like he kind of dies like a chump a little bit, even though I think their battle is pretty cool, but because it doesn't look very, very cool. Like once these goes, it's just sort of like, okay, you know, and it's such an interesting, like, this is getting, I guess, more into like the actual plot and stuff. But like, I do find it so interesting that like they chose to have their big kaiju battle just like in the middle of the movie. And then Anguirus is out, and then it's all Godzilla again after that. And I think that also makes it feel a little bit weird. And then Anguirus almost feels kind of incidental to the movie, which is weird, you know?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely weird and very unexpected. Like, I knew there was more of the movie when that happened, and so I was totally guessing as to what possibly could have been next. And what happened after makes enough sense that I didn't walk away from the movie being like, what the fuck just happened? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, you would have expected the climactic battle at the end of the movie, not in the middle of the movie or 2/3 of the way in.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about these guys. Let's talk about the movie itself, because there's plenty to talk about within the case. Where do you want to start? Where's a good place? Where it feels like a good place to start?
I honestly do think The Monsters is probably a good place to start. I think the fact that this is a monster versus monster movie is one of the things that's compelling to me, especially since this comes in the direct wake of the last movie. I know that the last movie, there's much more to dig into thematically and real world and all that sort of stuff. But I do think when you have monster versus monster and you have people going up or attempting to go about their daily lives and then having that entirely shattered, there is just an automatic place to start as far as what that could possibly represent, whether it was meant to or not, right? Yeah. Especially in the context of war, especially in the context of, an arms race, and any given population's place in the middle of that. Osaka is this place that didn't experience the first Godzilla attack, and then suddenly it is sort of collateral damage between these two monsters, and they just have to sit there and watch their entire lives get turned upside down and their whole city get destroyed kind of helplessly, especially after they thought that they figured it out. And some of the striking images for me are the ones that really drive home that like helplessness and having to simply witness these two massive powers accidentally take out your life. They're not trying to destroy your city. They're not trying to like retaliate against you. They just are fighting each other and you just are in the middle of it. And I think that's interesting. I don't know that there is a fully formed sort of takeaway from that relates directly to the first movie, but I do think there is something there if you are looking at Godzilla movies, at least at this point or to this point, as movies about war or reactions to war.
Yeah, I think that's really, really insightful, because I was thinking about it too. Like, I think that one of the strong points of this movie is that it is much more than the first one. It's much more from the perspective of just kind of like regular people getting swept up into this. Like, all of your lead characters just work for like a fishing business.
Right. Yeah.
And like, and obviously like the movie capitalizes on the fact that like there was just recently a war. So like, it's like they've been in a war before, so we can justify why they'd be on a plane and helping shoot at Godzilla or whatever. But at the end of the day, all of their goals is just like, we're trying to find fish to keep our business afloat and keep our city fed. Like, and that's where, that's all their goals are. They're not involved in the military stuff or the science stuff or whatever. And I think that perspective is a really interesting turn from the first one. And I do think you get this sort of feeling of like what it is like to be just a civilian living in a space that is in war, and the helplessness of that, which is a very specific feeling that you didn't really have in the first movie as much.
Yes. And I the images that will forever stay with me from this movie, there are 3 of them in particular. One of them is, what is her name? Is it Hidemi?
Yeah.
Watching from afar, just seeing basically what is kind of like an explosion in the distance, and just having to watch it and wonder what's going on over there, knowing that her home has basically just been obliterated, or assuming that her home has just been obliterated.
Yep.
That image I thought was really striking. I think maybe they used it a little too many times for it to have the same effect that it could have, but the image is really striking. Another one is where they have to like black out the city. And I think that's a thing that probably is not a surprise or anything like that. But I do think the fact that they're blacking out the city in order to try to minimize sort of their target, or like at least create less of like a light sort of footprint on Osaka. It's really hard for me to ignore the fact that those blackouts are things that in the real world people were asked to do to avoid bombings. Like to make cities appear or disappear from the map. So that was something that was hard for me to like ignore as a parallel.
Yeah.
But then also, and this one I can't really explain as much other than just like the mood of it struck me, and I can imagine just being like a civilian wondering what's going to happen next, are the images of Godzilla just sort of in the water, close to being on land, kind of in that deciding moment, and just the flares slowly coming down on the night sky. Like those three images to me really capture what I thought was the compelling mood of this, and that sort of like that moment of just waiting to see how bad things might get or how bad things have gotten.
Yeah.
And that sort of helplessness, you know?
Yeah. I think if this movie had let itself be more of a horror movie like the first one, like I think you've got your core there of what you're exploring, and like more images like that, I think really would have made this movie much closer to a masterpiece, rather than just kind of an action movie, you know?
Right, because the action stuff undercuts all those moments, right?
Yeah.
All the settings are like perfect for those moody, quiet, really pensive, worried, anxious moments. Like the anxiety is palpable in those quiet moments. And then at a certain point you're in Hokkaido, which is like this very snowy area, which is also a perfect setting for those like peaceful, quiet, anxious moments, you know, like a blanket of white snow where there just isn't that much detail is perfect for those things. So like all the pieces were right for this sort of artful masterpiece that is quieter than the first movie, but still has like an observation to make. And then you watch the battle and you're like, okay, I'm watching a completely different movie than I was 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, like the monster fights, you know, I mean, we've already complained ad nauseum about them. I also feel like there's a lot of Tsuburaya just like playing with miniatures in this movie more than in the first one, like just tons of planes and stuff, which is like cool. I don't mind that, but I feel like that almost feels like there's more, it almost takes away from any of the other drama in the movie.
In some cases, I think. And I think part of it is the reuse over and over. That one plane shot of bombs being dropped had to have been used at least 4 times, and I think maybe more than that.
Yeah.
I want to say 6 times, perhaps, because there were like multiple waves that they would use that shot for. And I thought the shot was really cool when I saw it the first time. I was like, oh, what a weird angle for them to use. It's like jarring, this angle they've shot this miniature plane at. And then you see it over and over and you just wish you didn't see it anymore. But like the miniatures in the dark on the ground, I thought were really cool, right? A lot of times the tanks actually looked pretty cool. The truck explosion, I thought was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like even though you can very much tell, it's like very apparent it's miniatures in those moments. Like,
but it looks
do think it looks really cool. It was like pretty impressive.
I agree with that.
But yeah, I mean, some of the overuse, I think, I don't even know if that's Tsuburaya's fault. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
he
probably
set up
not
these
his
cool
fault.
scenarios and these cool miniatures, and then someone else, I imagine, is the one overusing them.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I wouldn't blame him for that. I don't think he was doing anything wrong by experimenting with the miniatures or anything like that. I think it just was made. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was more that it was used so much that it really ultimately just felt more like him playing with toys than really than what the movie really needed. Which again, it's not. I don't fault him for that. I fault sort of the editing and probably some of the directing. Cutting it together. So the other thing of like, we're talking about the sort of perspective of this movie and sort of like the general, you know, the worldview of it and everything. One thing that I think I still can't really wrap my head around is like, I feel like I can almost get there, but like we're talking about, you know, this is
that's how I feel like that's how I feel about a lot of this movie is I feel like I'm almost getting there.
Yeah. I struggle with it a little bit because like the civilian perspective thing that we were talking about, where it's like, what is it like to be a civilian in war? What is it like to be a civilian in a kaiju, in a world with kaiju, you know, destroying your city? There's this other side of it where like, there's a lot of just like parties and like hanging out and like upbeat stuff in this movie, like sort of cut in. And my take on it is that I feel like it's like people trying to continue to live life in spite of the horror that's going on around them, or in spite of the impending horror, in the same way where it's sort of like, if you are living in a city that is in a country that is at war, and that there's the possibility that there might be a bombing or something there, but you're still living there. Like, you can't just stop life. You have to still enjoy yourself as much as you can, like that's the best takeaway that I can have from it. I do feel like sometimes those parties mess with the mood and the pace a little bit, in my opinion, but
I wasn't bothered by them at any point, but I do take your point that like there is a bit of a weird juxtaposition at times.
Yeah.
But I think for me, like, the fact that this movie takes us like 6 hours south to a totally different city in the country,
sure,
that did not experience the Godzilla attack, but seems to be vaguely aware of it. Like, it clearly made enough national news that like if you just walked up to somebody in the street and said like, oh my gosh, like, did you hear that Godzilla was spotted? They wouldn't be like, what's Godzilla? They would just probably be like, that sounds ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. That's true.
And so I think part of it is the attempt to sort of show that these are regular people and their lives have been just like irreparably interrupted. But I think part of it, I don't know if this is intentional, I think speaks to that idea that like they're 6 hours removed from that disaster. And I think a lot of times people just sort of separate themselves, probably as a coping mechanism,
sure,
or a way to protect themselves, or like ignore a potential impending doom. Like they sort of separate themselves from it. And so there's something sort of weird and horrifying about the fact that like a city was just leveled by Godzilla, and 6 hours away they're having like a sock hop. You know what I mean?
That's actually, I like that. I like that take.
I also think that the dance sequence is kind of horrifying just all on its own. I think that like crowds rushing out of a concert hall or a sporting venue or something, I think that's terrifying. And I think because of when this movie was made, they didn't like capitalize on how horrifying that is. But like, I think about that shit all the time. That's a me thing, right? Like, I think being trampled in a crowd is probably like one of the worst like things I can imagine.
Sure.
And so that to me, just that moment of panic when they're all trying to get out and sort of like react to this almost abstract threat that they know enough about to be scared of, I thought, for me at least, was effective.
Oh, I think if just the party sequence was there, I think I would have no issues, because even the first movie had a little bit of that too, of people trying to continue on with life, and then it's sort of like, never mind, Godzilla's here. I think it's like that coupled with like the surprise bachelor party later on that I feel really like, I feel like the only reason that the bachelor party, whatever that was, kind of stuff was there, was just to introduce like the lead character's military friends to then play a role in the final act of the movie. And I'm kind of like, but I feel like there's like a dead stop in that movie. That already sometimes feels a little bit too upbeat for the horrors that are happening. I
think if this movie was better made, it could work really, really well, where they think the problem has been solved and they're ready to go right back to their regular lives, or they're trying as hard as possible to like drown their grief. I mean, that party, they're getting wasted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's a way that could have worked well. I think because the movie isn't as good as it could be, it just kind of feels like they're trying to do the same thing twice. Like they're trying to just like have your peaceful moment and then interrupt your peaceful moment with Godzilla. And they do it twice, and not really in significantly different ways, which is a detriment to the movie.
Yeah.
It's the repeating thing, right? It's not just shots that they repeat over and over. There are certain beats within the plot or the story that they repeat.
I think that's why this movie feels so long, even though it's not. Like, it is sort of feels like you're kind of going in circles sometimes. Like, even like in the last
could
act,
work if it was intentionally meant to sort of loop you around and whip you around. It's not. It's definitely not.
There's like in the last act, it's sort of like how back and forth they go once they figured out where Godzilla is on that like glacier island. I'm just sort of like, this could have been your one action sequence, but you're like going back and going there and then going back in and then going back there. I'm like, come on, y'all, can we just end the movie, please?
Well, and I know we're jumping around, but at the point that you get to that moment where it's like, oh shoot, our problem hasn't been solved yet. Like there is nothing compelling happening between the characters about what to do about that, right? There is nobody that is like, in the first movie you had a character who was like, you can't kill Godzilla, you cannot do that, and that's compelling because everybody else is like, well, obviously we're gonna kill Godzilla, are you crazy? This movie doesn't have that person.
True.
And so when they find out that Godzilla is no longer attacking their city but still is alive, they need somebody to be like, this isn't worth it. Don't do this. They almost get close to it, with the main guy being like, are you sure you want to join? It'll be dangerous. But it's not actually a challenge to the idea of going and doing something about Godzilla. So to me, that makes that last piece feel incredibly empty and takes all of what could be compelling away. Because it could have been subversive, right? It could have been a battle at the end between people as opposed to monsters over what to do, and they just don't really go anywhere close to that. So it just ends up being that echo or that repeat.
Yeah, it is hilarious to me that like their relationship with Godzilla in this movie is that like they find Godzilla on an island and are immediately like, we kind of got to fucking kill this guy. And then Godzilla comes to their city, which fair, you want to defend yourself, and then he leaves, and then they find him again later and they're like, we got to fucking kill this guy. Like, it really is like Godzilla is a lot more passive in this movie. He's not actually like, he's never like rampaging through Osaka. It is always just collateral damage defending himself against a monster who is fighting him, you know?
And that's the thing that's so frustrating to me about that repeat, that last chunk of the movie, right? Is like the first the last chunk of the movie is a repeat of the end of the first movie,
but worse.
And the character that challenges the end of the first movie is in this movie. And that's not a question, right? Like nobody learned from the first time, and that could have been your entire setup. I mean, the way this movie ends, they basically leave it fully open for more to happen, but not because of anything the characters are deciding or choosing to do. The first movie, they end up killing Godzilla despite the objections of a scientist. This movie, they could have chosen not to kill Godzilla, like do the complete opposite.
Could have,
and that would have been way more compelling.
This Godzilla, like, which I guess if you're listening and didn't watch the movie and it's not clear, like they do establish this is a second Godzilla.
I called that, right? Yeah, that was my official prediction.
You absolutely called it. Yeah. To be fair, like Dr. Monty at the end of the movie is like, there could be other Godzillas. And you were like, that probably means there's other Godzillas.
Well, but still. Yeah. Like, I don't know that it's common knowledge that the very first Godzilla died and didn't come back. Or I don't know if that's actually true, but like, I don't know that is common knowledge for people who have not watched all of Godzilla.
That's true. Yeah, I think people just sort of assume like it's just Godzilla and maybe they don't explain it or something.
And so at this point, like, I don't know how many Godzillas there are because I also was sort of surprised, having even seen the movie, that Godzilla just was like definitively dead. Like, it's such a weird thing to have to accept because there are 30 plus Godzilla movies.
Yeah. No,
and they don't designate it differently, right? Like this, they just continue to call this Godzilla and briefly acknowledge it's a different Godzilla, but we're going to keep calling it Godzilla.
Yeah, it's Godzilla's identical cousin, obviously.
Sure,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The Osaka branch of the tree.
Yeah, the Osaka branch of the Osaka branch of the tree, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, the reason I brought that up is sort of like this Godzilla is like more sympathetic, I think, even than the first movie's Godzilla, just because this Godzilla doesn't really seem like the first movie's Godzilla was very sympathetic, and you could definitely read into all of his actions, right? As just being like a wounded animal, and it's like defending itself or retaliating when it's attacked, and it's just sort of stumbling through the city because it lost its home.
Right. But you can't make the argument that it does not attack the city at some point. Right.
It
I
still
think that's
does.
the big distinction.
Exactly. This Godzilla is kind of honestly minding his own business in the whole movie. He does stumble upon Osaka's shores, but like the first Godzilla, it doesn't seem like there's any intent. It seems like he's just exploring, and then Anguirus attacks him, and all the destruction is just because Anguirus attacked him, and he's fighting back, and then he leaves, and he only like ever shows up because of like weird light situations that we'll have to get into because I've never fully understood. Is he attracted to light?
Sure.
Repelled by light? I don't know. It seems inconsistent. But either way, he's just kind of doing his own thing while everyone is attacking him, and it doesn't even really ever like attack back very much.
No.
Like even when it's the final act, which again, they just go to his home and are sort of like, we've got to murder this guy because we just have to, because he might.
It's the same thing as the last movie. In the last movie, he was underwater sleeping. In this movie, he's just like chilling on his island, like getting some sun. Like that's it.
Yeah, and just the biggest, and he really like any deaths in this movie are just like, again, Godzilla kind of retaliating, and most of the time indirectly, just like swatting at it, and then they crash into a mountain or whatever, and like, but I think the thing that I don't like about this ending that I do like about the first movie's ending is that like the first movie, it is played as tragic that they just came to a point where they felt like they just needed to murder Godzilla, in that case with a weapon of mass destruction that they invented. In this movie, it's just sort of like, and we came up with a clever plan to kill Godzilla because we're cool action heroes. Isn't it great? And then they leave. And like, and then they don't kill him, but they still like trap him and probably assume that he'll probably just starve to death. Right. Like, yeah, I mean, the intent is that he'll never come back. That's why they come up with that plan. I don't understand why you can't just assume that his atomic breath will melt ice, but whatever.
No, it's
Monster
a bad
movie,
plan.
It doesn't matter.
Like, I think it's unequivocally a bad plan. And I think that's part of the problem. The end of the first movie, you can walk away from that movie agreeing or disagreeing very firmly with what happens. You know what I mean? Like, not that you would disagree or agree that Godzilla is sympathetic, but like, I think it's understandable enough that someone could walk away and be like, I get why they did what they did. I'm sad about it, but I get what they did. And you could also walk away from it being like, I'm sad about it, and I think what they did was unequivocally wrong, Right. And I think there's always a debate that could happen there. It's like my theory on like reality TV shows is that you need to have controversial winners because that keeps the story going forever, right? You need to have controversial endings so that people will continue to discuss forever. The first one has that controversial ending that you can kind of discuss forever. The second one has an ending that I can't imagine anybody walks away from caring about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not even that everybody would agree. I feel like no one would walk away being like, should we talk more about that ending? Like, no, we shouldn't, because it was a repeat. It was done less well, and he's obviously going to come back. Like, they don't check,
they don't even, they just leave. They're like,
just walk away.
Let's leave. Bye.
So it's definitely a bummer of an ending, and not in the tragedy bummer way that the first one was.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. It is very cool. It's funny that we just skipped all the way to the end of the movie, but I will say, we could talk about the characters, but I think it's because there's significantly less to talk about character-wise. But yeah, we can talk about it.
I think there's interesting stuff there, but
there is some interesting
stuff. We'll get
there
eventually.
Yeah, I do think the image of all the ice falling on Godzilla is like a memorable image, just because it is to me. Because it's an environment I don't know that you would expect a Godzilla thing to be in, and also it's just kind of cool, just literally just seeing like basically ice cubes that they're using just pouring all over him. I think it's fun.
I think for me, I love the idea of Godzilla in an environment you don't expect, and snow is certainly one that I don't expect, right? I think for me, it's the idea more than the actual image we got, kind of like the puppet. I like the idea of him sort of unhinging his jaw to breathe his atomic breath more than I like how this movie actually looks when he does it. So I'm with you on the idea of him being buried by an avalanche. I think the idea of that image is good, but I had a really hard time not thinking really hard about like how big is that ice, like I was really distracted by like how big the chunks of ice were, because some things you can make miniature and look like you can trick the eyes and the mind with certain things that are miniature. This I don't think really worked. Like I don't know that they were able to make an avalanche look right at just like a 6-foot man level.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I don't think it looks technically good.
Yeah.
But I think that's, for me, there's a charm. It's one of the charming things in a way that I think some later goofier Godzilla movies are charming too, right? Where it's not trying to be really serious. It's just the weird thing about this movie is that this movie is taking itself
tonally it's very serious.
Very seriously. So then a lot of these goofy things don't play very well.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's just like, that feels like something that we will see in a later Godzilla movie that is intentionally not taking itself very seriously and kind of goofy,
I think there is room for someone to say that it's like hypocritical to hold them to different standards or a double standard. I would argue it's not, because I think the tone matters. I think the
tone and the sort of intention matters.
Right.
The audience is supposed to take this seriously.
I'm absolutely expecting to see some absolutely wild bonkers shit that is like not meant to be taken seriously, that I'm going to be like, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We name dropped him, but How you didn't expect to see Dr. Diamante, right?
No, I don't know if that's somebody that I can't remember who I predicted might come back.
You picked the couple, Ogata and Emiko, probably.
That makes sense
because they're like,
to me.
you know, they're the hot, sexy leads in the first movie. Of course, it makes sense.
I mean,
in a lot of ways,
they just kind of replaced them with like other hot, sexy leads.
They really do.
Like, there are quite a few hot people in this movie, so like no complaints. But also, if you're gonna like replace your hot, sexy leads, like it would be nice to do something different with them. And they don't really. Like, it's kind of the same ones, but just different characters. It's like copying your homework, but changing it a little bit.
What if there was a love triangle, but we did it worse?
A love triangle that I also don't think is nearly as clear.
Because I agree.
At the point at which you realize it's a love triangle, I was sort of like, I have to actually pause and look intently at this picture to, like, really understand that she's looking at a picture of herself. Like, I don't think it was really that clear that that's who that was. Maybe that's just me, but I was like, I think I'm supposed to interpret this as her, but I'm really not as sure as I think I'm supposed to be.
They use like a picture of her as like a schoolgirl or something,
which we've never seen in the movie. If it was a picture we'd already seen in the movie, that would be really effective.
And it's also just like, it's weird because it's like, it is like I feel like we had a lot of good things to say about the love triangle in the first movie because it was so important to the plot, because that is what connected all of these characters together. And then every transfer of information was because you had Emiko as sort of at the center of like these two guys who would otherwise be totally unrelated, you know? And with this movie, it really does feel like what you complain about of a love triangle in a Hollywood picture, where it's just like they just shoehorned in a romance for no reason, just for some drama that no one cares about, you know?
It's truly inconsequential.
Yeah.
It really is totally an afterthought, I think, because like, I guess maybe the argument is that it makes like Kobayashi's death more tragic to her, but like, she's already known him forever. Like, you don't need to make it more tragic. Like, all it does is make it kind of weird that she like chuckles at learning he had a crush on her, and then he immediately dies, and we don't even really see much of her reaction to that or how it would be different. So it has no effect on anything. And I thought Kobayashi was an interesting enough character without that having to be part of his story. And the actor's a big deal from what I can tell. He's in like a bunch of Kurosawa movies.
Yeah. Minoru Chiaki, he's in a ton of them. I remember when I watched this, I was like, oh, I know that guy. I actually like love that guy. He's really good.
And he's really good in this movie because he's as close to this movie gets to having sort of like a comic relief character, but because it's not meant to be a funny movie in any way, he's not really doing that. He's just sort of like, you have your sort of like hot chiseled lead guy, and then you have the friend that's like a little bit goofy or not quite as polished as the hot chiseled guy, right?
Yeah.
And I thought
it's definitely like the heart. He's definitely the heart of the movie.
Yeah. And I think I think his actor does that incredibly well, and that enough was compelling to me. So to like add these layers, I thought was kind of annoying. It's really not where I thought the whole Mr. Groom thing was going to go. I actually was really confused by what that was, and as a result, ended up being really interested in what that meant. I thought there was going to be some sort of shockingly out of era like twist to the whole thing, like when there's this whole additional 20-minute act and it is so driven home that they're in a new place, and this Mr. Groom guy is this weird sort of famous character, and he won't say who the love interest is. I'm like, what weird shit are you up to? Like, are you like, do you know Godzilla still exists? Like, are you the subversive force in like the Godzilla situation? And it's not like, nothing I could have imagined as being cool is what they do. But I don't know. It was so weird, the love triangle. And then the sort of lead guy has like no real dimension to him in the same way that the first lead guy did. Yeah.
Tsukioka is his name, because we call him lead guy because I couldn't remember his name either. Tsukioka is his name.
Well, I think Kobayashi is a more memorable character than Tsukioka.
Right, he is. What I will say about Tsukioka, he's basically Ogata 2.0. I do think that I kind of like this actor better than Ogata's actor, who I can't even remember the name of, because I think that he's more charismatic, to be honest.
I agree with
like,
that.
And he isn't
like instantly.
Like, and he's a fucking smoke show. Like this cool ass pop collar. Like he's so he has zero dimension to this character other than I'm a hot guy. But
that's not the actor's fault. The actor's charisma bleeds
that's what
through
I'm saying.
the camera in spite.
I think Ogata is more of a forgettable character that only works because he's in a very, very good movie. Like, I don't think that there's really much of anything to him. I think Tsukioka is in a not particularly good movie, but Hiroshi Koizumi is the actor who plays him, and I think that he is so good at the charismatic that he being charismatic that he elevates this character despite having truly nothing to work with other than I am in love with Hidemi and Kobayashi is my friend and I fly plane. There's nothing else to him, but I think he is very compelling in spite of that, which I think is a testament to the actor who I will say, this is not to spoil anything particularly, but that actor is one of those Godzilla actors that just pops up in tons of movies in many roles across the spectrum.
That's
you will
wild.
see this actor many times. And that's the thing. I think you will be surprised.
I guess it makes sense given the oozing charisma.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of shocked.
You will be surprised. I'm calling it out here so it can just be stated that there are many Godzilla actors that it just becomes a thing for them to just show up in different roles.
I mean, I love that. That's
great. You will be surprised at what actors you will see again and be like, they really let that person play another character.
Interesting.
You will be surprised. But he is one of those. I think it's up to the 2000s. He's in movies, which is really cool.
To be honest, that's not that weird. I mean, this is tokusatsu, and in other tokusatsu properties, you see the same actors, sometimes even within the same franchise. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So much so that even in Power Rangers, it happened a couple times where an actor would play a completely different character. I mean, not quite to the same recognizability as some of these folks, but I guess I'm not surprised when I think about it and I'm presented with that fact. Yeah.
I'm glad that they let him do more things because I do think that he is kind of a bright spot in this movie, despite, again, really being a nothing character.
I don't know if I would
really?
take it as far as you are.
I really like him a lot. I don't know. I found him very electric on screen.
I find the actor to be really sure, electric, but I don't think he overcomes the role. I think the role is still very inconsequential and very much just fair. Here is our hero on the cover of the magazine that actually doesn't do that much.
Yeah, I think he's just really hot.
I think it's agree with you. When I said there were a ton of hot people in this movie, I mean, he's right up there, if not number one.
Kobayashi, more my type, but the power of the pop collar, man. I can't. It just does things to me, I guess.
Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it. There are several other people that are far more my type in this movie, but Tsukioka is just banging.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess to our point, what else is there even to say about those characters?
I really don't think there's that much to say about characters. I was really bummed that Dr. Yamane wasn't in this more. I was so excited to see him. I was like, oh, great. Here's my through line. This is the character from the first movie that actually makes the most sense to be here, not simply because, and this is what the movie gets wrong, the best character to bring forward, not simply because he is the scientist who knows about Godzilla, which is where it ends for this movie, and that pisses me off. But the right character to bring forward because he's the one person sympathetic to Godzilla. That's the one person that makes the most sense to bring back because he complicates the formula of this monster destroyed our city, we must kill the monster. It makes me so mad that they didn't recognize that's what he's for, not just to give them the download and show footage from the first movie.
Yeah.
Also, why is there no music or sound over that footage? It drives me crazy.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, he really just shows up to just give you a clip show, basically, and then the clip show is silent. And they're in it. If it was meant to be a mood setting thing where it was sort of unsettling how quiet it was, maybe, but I don't feel it doesn't play that way to me.
They're not showing horrified reactions. They're not showing.
Sure. I think that would help a lot. Yeah.
Right. There's nothing to establish that it's a horrifying mood moment. So at that point, just bring in bring in the horror score of the first movie and let it really sink in, you know?
Yeah, like I guess like they're playing it like maybe it would have been in 1955 if you're just playing a newsreel projection, there wouldn't be music, but we're watching a movie, you can just put a score.
Exactly, that's the thing, right? It's for entertainment, and I think it's the kind of thing that maybe I'm taking for granted because it's like such an obvious choice now. It would be such a bizarre choice to make to do what they did in that moment. And they really are just doing straightforwardly like, here's your recap, here's the download. Like, so I get it. And there's like this really early, like super duper early, like animation piece that I can't remember what it's called, but it actually coincidentally is about a dinosaur. And they literally do kind of what this movie did. And it's really awkward where it's just like some guys sitting in a room, like, and then somebody like pretends to project the cartoon on the wall. And it's so awkward, but like, it's such an early film piece that you're like, I get why. Like, there were no conventions. So I guess I'm being really hard on this, but it doesn't change how awkward of a moment it is.
Yeah, and I'd be more forgiving of it if it wasn't like literally the only thing that they give Yamane to do.
Exactly.
You know, and what sucks is that
so mad. I kept waiting for him to come back.
I feel like
he deserves more than a cute cameo.
Well, he does, and also Takashi Shimura is like really acting in that scene, like very subtly, because it's sort of like you can tell that this guy is like despondent and really like heartbroken that this is going to happen again. Like he is giving that. The script isn't giving that to him. They don't follow up on it all, but he knows the character that he's playing, and you can see the look on his face and the way that he delivers. Like, he is very quiet, which maybe is because they just didn't write lines for him, but he plays it like he is just like, I'm here and I wish that we weren't here. And anytime he says anything, it's sort of like, it's just as we feared. It's basically my worst nightmare come to life, is that we have to deal with this again and we have to kill another Godzilla.
He should have been this series like Dr. Loomis, like in Halloween, right? The constant, right? Like, all the characters around are changing, but you have this one constant who is an expert on the monster. Like, and Loomis is just there for those movies, and it provides this really important sort of like rock and like familiarity, and that's what Yamane could have been, and I would argue should have been. Like, Yamane should be in the next movie too, you know? Like,
it's possible that maybe he was like busy with another movie or something like that because this was so fast tracked. Like, maybe they tried and couldn't. Yeah, but he was
able to show up for one day to do the recap.
Like that's I feel like that's probably very likely.
Yeah.
But then in that case, I'm sort of like, maybe I would just rather you have not included him at all then, and then I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe,
I don't know if the joy that it brought me was outweighed by the rage that it caused me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that weighs out.
Right.
It was more like it felt more like a tease than like a reward.
Yeah. I agree with you. Or, I feel like it would be more beneficial to just replace him with a different but similar character, like bring in another doctor who's in Osaka just to provide that perspective of being sympathetic. Like, it would be very clear, like, sequel bullshit of just being a replacement character, but this movie is already doing so much sequel bullshit anyway that like, why not do that too, to at least make the story a little bit better, you know, and more complex.
Right. And my 2023 brain was immediately like, and you can mention him, you can name drop him, but that's such a modern thing. They wouldn't have done that. Yeah. Which is a good thing, I guess.
I guess so. Right.
There's not really their Easter egg, expectations, which is good. It's nice to have movies that you don't have to expect Easter eggs in.
It's very true. It's very true. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Anything else for characters before we move on to any other stuff?
I don't think so. I do kind of wish that the fish cannery like boss kind of had a more interesting role, and I don't really know why or what I would have wanted, but I was really drawn to him early, and I thought he was going to be kind of a focal character.
And he's in the movie a lot. He just doesn't really do much.
Right, that's the thing. He's like kind of a constant character and a constant presence, but he really is just there as a family member of Hidemi, who really represents the sort of human element being upended more than he does. So I don't know. Like, he has a moment where he like watches his cannery explode, But I don't know. I don't know what I want from that, but I just was expecting a lot more from that character.
I mean, I think that what we were talking about earlier was sort of like the idea of this movie's perspective being from like just people who are just working in the city rather than like military and science people. I feel like there could be an element that I feel like they almost touch on it a little bit at the beginning, where it's just sort of like, as soon as there's news of Godzilla, like the worry is sort of like, oh, production, like, are we going to be able to continue with our the production of our fish, right? Like our canning and stuff like that. And I do feel like either, you could deal with sort of like what it's like to be like a businessman in that world, and sort of like where does your focus on the business of it and the money side of it, and like how much money you're losing from Godzilla stuff, like, and maybe the morality of that or something like that, versus like at what point do you sort of like focus on your employees as humans or something like that. Like, there's plenty of directions I feel like you can go that I feel almost are teased at the beginning of just having the element of these characters all being, working at a fish cannery and here being the owner of it. But then it just doesn't really go anywhere with it at all.
That's interesting. I hadn't even necessarily thought of like the sort of almost like cynical version of his character, or like the callous version of his character, because that could have been really interesting. I was thinking more along the lines of like, this is a guy who potentially like built this business up, or like or maybe his father built this business up, and he's the one person we get who has like a very, very direct, tangible thing that we get to look at being destroyed.
They could have done more with that.
Yeah, I think they could have done more with that. I don't really know. It's not that big a deal, but I just was expecting it would be a big deal, I guess.
It's a good point, especially, again, compared to the first movie, where I feel like there really was such you get from these little moments in that movie of seeing people's lives be destroyed,
right?
Like that you don't really get in this movie. Like, even, there's some striking shots of like the city post monster fight, but like when the cannery is destroyed and it seems like that should be really devastating, they pretty quickly are sort of like, oh, we're just going to go to another city where their cannery is and it'll be fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they kind of solve that problem, and everyone seems really chill and upbeat about that.
And there was something about that felt almost like, I don't know. There was something about that felt inventive, but it's not. It's more convenient than it is inventive. You know what I mean? It's the same thing as that. It's that whole last act is sort of like on the line of like, is this inventive or is this convenient? And it almost, if not literally every time, falls on the side of convenient. So I think it probably just, I think it's all part of that. I do think the one thing we have not even remotely touched on that I think fits into what we're already talking about is how this affects the prison. And
that was literally my next point that I wanted to get to.
I actually think this is amazing that this is in this movie. I mean, if you're going to have this movie that has this really like ground level civilian element to it, right, and explores some of the effects, it could have gone further, like we were talking about with the cannery, but explores some of the effects of what does everyday life look like when it's completely like disrupted, right?
Yeah.
The idea that like you have to move people from hospitals, you have to move people from prisons, you have to move your homes, you have to move your schools, like you have to move all these things that you can't physically move, but there are people involved. And so we get this really cool sequence that actually does play into the plot in a way that I thought was maybe one of the more clever, if not the most clever elements of the plot, where these prisoners kind of devise their own escape successfully, but then in this sort of weird, twisted, almost Shakespearean twist of fate, like they end up destroying themselves and undoing the solution that the military succeeds at in getting Godzilla away from Osaka. Like, it's really wild how big the consequences of their actions are.
Yeah.
And how it ends up falling back on them. Like, there's something, I really think that might be my favorite part of the movie is like the role that these prisoners play.
It's very clever. I mean, it's very funny that Tsukioka and Kobayashi like just happened to cross paths with this major plot point, like out of nowhere, and get involved with the car chase. I'm
like not even mad at it, right? Because they make a whole big deal about why those two are in a car in the first place.
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, I guess I guess it is something, because I remember when the prison sequence first started.
Yeah,
I didn't remember exactly how that all played out when I first watched it, years ago, and so I was sort of like, this feels like just a weird like detour in the movie that we're just watching like a random prison break or something like that.
I think that's
like,
part of what's brilliant about it.
Because it takes a
does feel
while.
like a totally unrelated thing.
And it takes a while, and then it's almost kind of frustrating because it's sort of like, what the fuck does any of this have to do with the movie? It sucks. And then when they crash into because it's almost like it's so contrived in a lot of ways, but like in a way that I think is kind of brilliant. It's sort of like, of course they're going to get away during this time, and they're going to get away in like an oil tanker or whatever, and like crash into something that's going to just explode, have the biggest explosion in the city. Like, of course that's what happens. But yeah, it is so like just this bizarre chain of events is that no military organization could have ever planned for. Yeah. Why would anyone think that this bizarre chain of events is even a possibility that would then bring Godzilla back and then just undoes everything they did? Like, there is something so fascinating about that.
I think it's artful because that bizarre chain of events that nobody could expect feels perfectly at home in a post-apocalyptic setting, in a purge setting where like the vast majority of people are not out on the streets, like in setting, like in an evacuation, like, which is what this movie is. Like, that bizarre chain of events can only happen realistically if somebody abandoned their tanker, if you are in a rush having to transport a bunch of prisoners, like if you happen to have very few people on the street that cops can commandeer the car. Like, it's all so much coincidence, but the coincidences don't feel as coincidental because they're in this bizarre, empty, sort of barren city setting. Like, I just was like really impressed with that because, like you said, you get to a point just far enough that you're like, what are we doing? And then it ends up being so important. That's what this movie could have been, like, from beginning to end, right? That whole last act could have been that. I feel like the whole like flare situation, which I like, could have been that. Like, there's so many things that could have been that sort of like, what are we doing here? Like, the movie that I just saw 6 months ago was a lot more straightforward than this as far as like what's happening on screen. But I mean, they didn't set out to make this sort of like subversive, unconventional reaction to the first movie.
Yeah. Or, even just exploring the way that like, no matter how much planning these like, these organizations can do, that the military can do, or scientists can plan for, all the stuff that like the people that we saw in the first movie that are in charge of stopping Godzilla, and
all these rooms full of strategists, and all these maps, like, and
this, like, if this movie was more like, because this movie, again, the perspective of this movie seems to be that it wants to focus on the civilians and what it's like to be a civilian in the situation. I do think that there is something so interesting about that thesis being that like, civilians, not only is it weird and terrifying to just be in this position where you are totally powerless and just witnessing all this happen around you, but also like you also have this weird power to just like completely disrupt everything because you are the people that are in the city that is currently being defended and planned around, and you can, and like all the things that the strategists can't plan for are just people in a city trying to live their lives in spite of this. Like there's something so cool about this that this movie could have explored. And it's like, again, it's like almost there in so many different ways. It's just, I don't think the intent was really to go in that direction. It just kind of probably is more accidental than anything.
Which is
just a bummer.
The movie this could have been. I just don't love the movie it is.
Yeah, it was just frustrating because the first movie was so intentional, and was digging so deep into what it was looking at, So
it would have been so interesting to watch this movie out of order. I mean, it would have made no sense to do that, but like it would have been interesting because I had the primer of the first movie being so intentional that when I watched this one, I was looking for the intention and projecting intention onto things that almost certainly didn't have it. And it almost makes me appreciate the movie more than I think if I had watched it entirely out of context, Yeah. It's a really interesting experiment.
I think this movie is kind of like what, when we talked about for the first movie last time of like people who are like, oh yeah, I know the original Godzilla movie is like serious and like about nuclear weapons and war or whatever, but like I don't expect it to be so haunting.
Dark as fuck.
I feel like this movie is kind of what people think people who were saying
Probably,
that think
yeah.
the first movie was, where it's just kind of like a B movie monster movie that has some darkness to it and some tragedy to it and some heavy themes to it, and definitely has something to say about war, but like just not in a way that's like actually really hitting you,
right,
you know?
Right. You get the feeling that it's saying something about war, but it's not coherent.
Right. Yep. Yeah. The like, okay, I don't really have too much more to say about the plot stuff, to be honest, but like the other important thing to the plot, I guess we haven't dug into a lot in addition to the prison breakout, is like the light aspect, which which is like, it's interesting because I feel like it's kind of a retcon for the first one, right? I don't feel like anything in the first movie told you that lights, that because the explanation in this movie, you can correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but the explanation, I think, is that like lights send Godzilla like into a rage because of memories of the hydrogen bomb, right? And that's why there's this idea that they can use lights to either attract or repel him. I feel like it depends on the situation, and that's what I'm confused about is it attracting him or repelling him? I don't understand.
My understanding, I don't think, comes from clarity of the movie. I think it comes from trying to derive a difference between the flares and the explosion that the prisoners cause. And like, why are those things different? You know, I don't think the movie lays that out. I think you almost have to just like decide why that makes sense, which then the argument is that it just doesn't make sense. But like for me, I was just thinking like, okay, if the lights that they're talking about being this sort of like ingrained trauma are represented by the flares, then like, that's the thing that's the deterrent. The Godzilla thinks that like they're I guess bombing it again or something like that. But what's weird is they overlap two things that they shouldn't have overlapped, because the explosion is like, Godzilla's kind of a curious creature. Godzilla kind of just like checks out the city, and so if the blackouts are really there to prevent the city from being something worth checking out, you know, like I guess Godzilla doesn't have night vision, so if you can't see the light, there's nothing there to be curious about. So when the explosion happens, it's like, oh, there is something to go check out there, and that's when he turns around. So it's like, it's not cohesive. Like they have these two different light things going on, and the problem is that they say one thing about lights over here and establish that and support that, and then they say a totally different thing about lights over here and then establish that and support that. So I get them separately. The problem is just that they coexist.
And it does feel like the only reason any of that is there is because, again, this is a little bit more of an action movie than a horror movie, so they need something that they can sort of use as a deterrent to Godzilla in the narrative, that it's like some way that humans can make an impact on what Godzilla is doing, rather than in the first one where there's sort of just like the whole horror of it is that like there's literally nothing they can do that stops him or anything like that. And so they sort of introduce this idea of just like, we can sort of maneuver and control a little bit where Godzilla is going, at least. And then you also have, you know, the sort of reference to what Japan actually was doing during the war with like real life blackouts in Osaka. Like I think there maybe was working a little bit backwards from there. And then also, you know, so they can find a way to like dramatize like attracting him back to the city too. Like I understand why it's introduced here, I guess.
Well, they just need to decide what light represents and do one thing with it. You know, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like you can't have multiple meanings for light in here. Yeah. A part of it, I'm sure, is that they just didn't have any other way to represent re-traumatizing Godzilla to get him to go away. Like, how do you recreate that, you know? So I'm sure that's part of it, because they effectively use the fire at the end to create like a wall and a barrier, right? So like the idea that they can manipulate Godzilla through extreme examples of light, I think could work, except for the fact that he just was like stomping around amidst a bunch of fire, you know, like, it's not well thought out enough for any of it to firmly mean anything. Yeah. But I get the individual pieces is the problem.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. It's just it's another thing that feels where you feel how rushed this movie kind of was.
This is another close but no cigar situation. I mean, so many of these things are like, you're so on the verge of something that means something and you just didn't quite get to the end of the sentence.
I have a fun thing that'll be like a
Cool.
little bit of a chunk of stuff to talk about. Do you have anything more to say about the actual content of this movie before we kind of move
I
on?
don't think so. I think that is, we talked about characters, we talked about the monsters, we talked about the suits, the combat. I mean, I guess the only thing that I don't think I really drove home, and I don't have a lot to say about it, I do want to stress that like the depictions of destruction, I did think were really effective. So I think that as far as the collateral damage of it all, as far as the like destruction of your life of it all, I think it does nail that. It just does too many other things wrong for that to be the sticking point.
Yeah.
If I didn't make that clear, that was a thought I kept having throughout the movie. So
fully co-sign. No, I think that is important to say because it's like both a positive and a negative about this movie, really. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's about it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, mentioned this at the top.
Yeah.
In America,
oh boy,
this movie was called Gigantis the Fire Monster.
You kind of warned me about this a little bit, so I knew not to like dig into it. I'm excited to learn more now.
Yeah. And so here's the thing is that I really strongly want to do an episode at some point in the future about the Raymond Burr duology, where it's like two of the Godzilla movies, they actually do like a different cut of it where they film new American scenes and put Raymond Burr into it and build him in the story or whatever, right? I do want to do that because I think those are very, very interesting. This is a case that is like kind of similar, but not enough. So I'm not enough to justify doing a whole episode because it is ultimately just a dub, but the story behind it is still interesting. So I think you know this, but like the first Godzilla movie, when it came to America a few years later, they did add American scenes to it. It wasn't just a straight dub. There was dubbing involved, but they do like kind of rewrite stuff and recut it and add an entire American subplot to it.
Yeah. I'm really worried that's the movie I watched in class. I won't know until I watch it, but I'm like worried that's the one they showed us.
It might have been, yeah. I mean, because it's also like that's always been very easy to access. Yeah. So, that precedent exists. And I think part of it is just because of the fear of importing anything foreign into America. Our American audience is going to understand this without seeing a white person.
Power Rangers is built entirely on this concept.
Well, that's kind of part of the reason I really want to do the Raymond Burr movies because it's like it feels like it is just the proto Power Rangers. Yeah. And it almost was done for this movie as well because Toho sold the American distribution rights to a different production company than the first movie. And in this case, it was a company called ABPT Pictures Corporation. Horrific name for a movie studio.
ABPT. Cool.
I have no idea. They don't exist anymore, so like it literally doesn't matter. Maybe because your name sucks. But they did want to do the Power Rangers thing where it's sort of like, we're just going to take all of the special effects shots. We're going to take the monsters shots, just use those, and then film entirely new American footage with American characters, create this whole non-Godzilla movie called The Volcano Monsters, where Godzilla is a T-Rex, Anguirus is just an Ankylosaurus, and they're just like discovered in a cave. Okay. And we're just going to do that. Which, I get why that's an idea, right? I understand how you get to that point. It even got as far as like Toho shipped brand new Godzilla and Anguirus suits to Hollywood so that they could also supplement with new footage as well if they needed to.
So much of this is familiar to you and me.
Yeah.
for Power Rangers reasons.
It is straight up just Power Rangers, right?
This is wild.
And yeah. But like I said, they closed down before production could even start. So like, and those suits I think were even like lost. So who knows where those suits
Oh shit.
I'm sure, they're degraded by now, but
they're somewhere. I want to believe.
I don't think that those things have lasted
I want to believe. They might look like absolute shit, but I want to believe.
Yeah. So after that, but that doesn't really have a lot to do with this, but it's just all of that was just so interesting. It's like the movie being shopped around. Where it ends up is the producer Paul Schreibman who acquires the rights, and he's the same way where it's like, I'm not gonna spend all the money to film a bunch of new stuff, but I also don't want to do a straight dub of the movie either because we want to Americanize this. And his weird idea, which he has been on the record in the years since that, it's sort of like, this was a mistake. But for some reason, the thought was like, people aren't going to go see a sequel. A new movie with a new monster is going to sell better than just saying this is another Godzilla movie. So his idea is that you change Godzilla's name to Gigantis.
I was wondering.
Yep. Say that Gigantis is like a prehistoric fire monster related to Anguirus, which is Anguirus, who's another fire monster. So they're just like related.
No, it's
and
not.
Basically, right. And that they sort of, and the idea is like you give the audience the impression that this is not a Godzilla movie. This is a totally unrelated movie, and that'll hopefully attract more people, to the point that like when you watch the movie, because I did you can watch this on Tubi, like the Gigantis cut.
I believe
like
it.
Godzilla's roar is even replaced with Anguirus's roar sometimes, just to like connect them better, to make it seem like they're two different creatures. Yeah.
Part of me admires the swing, even though I'm sure it's terrible.
Oh yeah, it's not good. And it is all the music is replaced, which, you know, Sato's music wasn't like a super standout, so it's not like the worst thing ever. It's just replacing his action music with like even more generic American monster music, action music that was already like in other sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
There's tons of stock footage added to, like other like war footage that they add just to like add some more action to it. But here's what's weird though. So like they're do this whole thing where it's like, this isn't a Godzilla movie, this is a different movie. They still keep in the entire sequence of Dr. Yamane showing clips from the original Godzilla movie, and just like, this is another Gigantis creature that attacked Tokyo.
Wait. Yeah. So they have the whole recap with Dr. Yamane, and they don't just say something similar like this happened with a monster named Godzilla.
No, they still are just sort of like, it's a Gigantis monster.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is so stupid. Like, I can actually understand the compulsion to be like, well, especially based on how the first one ended. I could understand the compulsion to be like, this is a different monster, right? I wouldn't have even been surprised if when it made its way over to the United States, they just called it a different name and didn't change anything else. Like, there are scenarios where I could see that being the case because it is literally a different monster than the first monster you saw, right?
Yeah.
But to then just sort of pretend that Godzilla wasn't Godzilla is I can't understand it. There's nothing to understand there.
Right. It's funny because it's sort of like, obviously an audience in the late 50s isn't as savvy as audiences maybe are now, because we have the internet and shit and everybody thinks they're a film critic or whatever nowadays. But even all of that said, they weren't stupid either. Right. Audiences would have just watched a Godzilla movie a few years ago that, even in the States, it obviously wasn't as popular in the States as it was in Japan. It was still pretty popular in America to the extent that it could be. So, and those people who would be going to see a monster movie probably just saw the first Godzilla a few years ago and probably remember it, or at least recognize those scenes from a few years ago.
It also does no harm to your movie to reference a monster from another movie. Like,
yeah, it's so silly. It's so silly.
Because if I know Godzilla, I'm like, oh, interesting. That's Godzilla in that footage. If I don't know Godzilla, it's just a scientist talking about a different monster that existed once. Like, that's so bizarre.
It's so bizarre. And also, like, they even make the Dr. Yamane's reel even longer because they add all these other, like, this other stock footage, because not only is he talking about, because basically the context is like, he's not just saying like, by the way, Gigantis, another Gigantis just attacked Tokyo. It's also like, it's part of this long explanation for where the Gigantis creatures came to be. So they use all this like stock footage from like some movies that like nobody's ever identified where it came from. Like, it might literally come from like some like science, like low budget, like science educational films or something, because it's just images of like some random dinosaur, some cheapo dinosaurs, or like some like fishes crawling out of the slime to represent like evolution or whatever, just being like, the long span creatures have evolved and there were dinosaurs and they developed into the Gigantis creatures who were then awakened by the nuclear bomb. Like, it's so fucking weird. It is an entertaining watch.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna watch this now,
it is
right?
Entertaining. I haven't even told you some of the best part about this though. It is entertaining. They also like add a bizarre amount of narration, which like is not like you can to this day you can watch dubs and like anime dubs and stuff where like they try to fill in every quiet space with characters, narrating, right? But like it is it is to a hilarious extent, to the point where characters are like, it's not just narrating stuff that an American director thinks, you know, audiences wouldn't understand because it's a Japanese thing, or like their, you know, moments of silence that they're filling out. It's not just that. It's also like just narrating what characters are doing on screen. Like,
oh boy.
Yeah. Like, there's like one point where he's like, and I was flying and then I saw my friend Kobayashi and I waved to him when I saw him because I was so happy. And I'm like, I know you're doing that on screen. I can watch you waving to your friend Kobayashi.
You're not talking. You're not telling me about what you're thinking. You're just telling me what you're doing.
Yeah. It's
weird.
It's weird. The best part of this though, is that it kind of has an all-star voice cast for this dub. It's actually kind of so Key Luke. Do you remember us talking about Key Luke?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we talked about him. We talked about him back in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, but like he has been in a shit ton, absolute metric shit ton of stuff in America.
Oh, he's a huge deal. He's somebody that more people should know. Like that's a name people should know. Yeah,
like very important to. Like didn't he start like this, like help start like the Screen Actors Guild or something like that? Yeah, he was a founding member of the Screen Actors Guild. Like incredibly like important, influential person in the world of Hollywood.
Yeah.
But he voices Tsukioka. And so he's the lead in the movie essentially, which is really wild. Yeah. A few other names. These next two you wouldn't necessarily probably recognize immediately, but you will recognize what they've been in.
Sure.
So Paul Frees, I don't remember who he voices, but he has like done tons of animated voice acting. He was Boris Badenoff in Rocky and Bullwinkle. He did tons of Rankin and Bass voice roles, including Santa Claus, tons of Hanna-Barbera roles. He's the narrator of the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney.
Interesting.
And
this name did sound familiar, so I guess I'm not surprised that I recognize everything you're mentioning.
Yeah, and he's the voice on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disney that famously says "Dead men tell no tales." Like that's the guy who says that. So he's in this movie. Marvin Miller, lesser known, I think, but he's like the voice of Robbie the Robot in Forbidden Planet, which I thought was cool as hell. So another person who's done cool shit. And last but certainly not least, a very young George Takei in one of his earliest roles. Just plays one of the incidental characters in the movie.
Wow.
Yep. And I don't think you would even really, I mean, maybe if you're really listening to it, you can tell, but like, I don't know that you would necessarily pick him out that's George Takei. Again, he's not like one of the leads. He's like one of the like Tsukioka's like war friends that shows up late in the movie. But yeah, he's doing he did some of these dubbing things early before he was on Star Trek. Yeah, I think just before this he had done a voice in the Rodan movie, but other than that, he really hadn't done anything else at this point.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Wild, right?
Huh.
Yeah. The only other observation I had about that movie, I don't remember who voices Kobayashi. I think it's either Marvin Miller or Paul Frees. Okay. Whoever it is, they make him sound like the dumbest, goofiest person in the world.
I'm not even remotely surprised. I identified the fact that he is just so barely not comic relief that surprises me 0% that they just turned him into probably a Gomer Pyle-ass goober.
Oh,
you know?
Absolutely. It's like, duh, that kind of thing.
And that's disrespectful. That's disrespectful. Kobayashi really rules.
He's a great character, and they still give him like the tragic death at the end of the movie, so it's almost kind of weird that it's like, well, why did you like make him literally a cartoon character though? I don't know. But yeah, weird movie. I would recommend it for the fun of it. And what's funny too is that like when you watch it on Tubi, and I think on probably some other platforms too, it's just listed as Godzilla Raids Again. Like, and they do change the title sequence to say Godzilla Raids Again, but literally everything else is straight up Gigantis, the Gigantis dub.
Why would they do that?
This is the official English dub of Godzilla Raids Again, and as far as I know,
Gigantis is the official English dub?
It is the official English dub of Godzilla Raids Again. There is no other dub that I know, no other English dub that I know of that exists. So if you want to watch the dub of this movie, you are watching Gigantis, essentially.
I'm kind of surprised, and maybe fans have done this. In fact, I would bet money fans have done this, but I'm kind of surprised that at no point they redubbed the movie.
I don't know. I think because Godzilla dubs are such a weird thing that it's people at this point, it's sort of like you either are like people either embrace the goofiness and badness of many of the majority of dubs, or it's like just watch the subs.
Okay,
like
I get it.
There's just not really a middle ground. You know,
it would be like redubbing Yu-Gi-Oh because it's stupid. Like part of what's fun about Yu-Gi-Oh dubs is that they're stupid.
Yeah, I don't know that there's really like an audience for old like Showa era Godzilla movie dubs that are done seriously at this point. Like I don't know who's really necessarily going to watch
maybe
it,
not like in an official capacity, but I don't know. Like I'm just there has to be a group of fans who've done it.
You know that they're a fan dub. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely fan dubs of these movies. Yeah. I mean, cause it's been such a long standing thing of people, you know, because for a long time, as much as like the subs versus dubs argument, it's like kind of annoying nowadays. Like for a long time, it was genuinely hard to access the Japanese versions of a lot of these movies.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I'm sure the people were working on fan dubs years and years and years, decades ago, probably for, you know, whatever movies they could just to have
like
something.
Mattered more to be like, no, I want you to watch the movie, but you can't like, like I want you to see the movie that it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, it's like it's not as relevant now, but
yeah,
I'm sure that those things exist.
I get that.
Yeah, fascinating journey.
Yeah.
I will say the poster for this movie kind of fucks.
Yeah.
If you just Google like Gigantis,
for Gigantis
monster,
specifically.
For Gigantis specifically, their poster sucks. No. Their poster fucks. Yeah, if you just say like Gigantis Fire Monster poster, like like sort of red poster,
rips.
It's really cool. It's really, really cool. Yeah,
that's super cool.
Like, the red drawing that they do there. It's really
they make both of them look really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good ass poster. I dig it.
Awesome on that.
Like that's the kind of like I kind of want that poster on my wall. Like it's really cool.
Yeah, me too. You don't have to say, in fact you probably won't say, but I hope we see Anguirus again. I like Anguirus, and I'm like bummed that like you said, it was kind of a I don't remember how you described it, but sort of like an underwhelming end to Anguirus. Yeah. So I don't know, like I know that there are some pretty iconic monsters that we'll see more than once. I just don't know if Anguirus will fall. He should, because he's the first, but will he? I'm not sure.
Sure. Well, this is such a great segue, Doug, because my next section is your predictions.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And one of my questions from this movie is, will we see Anguirus again? And you're saying you hope so. So I'm going to say, do you think yes?
I hope so. And there are just so many movies, and I think that there are at least some movies where it's not just monster versus monster, it's like monsters. So I'm going to say, if only in those situations where it's like lots of monsters, Anguirus has to appear at some point. So my official prediction is yes, we'll see Anguirus again.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know if that's hopeful or smart, but
yeah, sure.
Yes.
Sure. We'll find out. Yeah. Do you think we're going to see any of these human characters ever again? I mean, I know we said some of the cast members show up again, but characters specifically.
No. I think if Dr. Yamane had been a character throughout this movie, I would have predicted Dr. Yamane returns again, like a Loomis in the Halloween series.
Sure.
But no, I bet we're not seeing any of these characters again. I would be shocked and probably disappointed.
Cool.
I mean, outside of them being hot, but they can be hot in a different character, you know?
Exactly. I think it's probably for the best, honestly. Yeah.
I want to see the actress who's like the Hidemi's friend.
Yeah.
She was gorgeous. I want her to do more, like, and she kind of was fun, like, for the few little interactions she had. I was like, I want to see more of you.
Yeah, you know, I didn't even look into who that actor was. So, I mean, she might show up in other Godzilla movies, and I just like didn't realize it. So we'll find out.
I'll recognize her.
Yeah. Okay. So my other predictions are not related to this movie, but related to the next movie we're about to watch, because we're going to do our first jump, right? So if you forgot, listeners, or didn't listen to the first two episodes, which you should, we are sort of structuring this where, like, right now we're basically watching every original sequel to the first Godzilla, essentially. So basically we watch this movie, the direct sequel, and then we're going to watch a reboot and then another reboot that are meant to be the direct sequels to the original movie, right? So the next movie we're watching is 1984's The Return of Godzilla.
Oh, interesting.
the first time Godzilla has ever been like rebooted. The first time where it's just sort of like, we've done a lot of Godzilla movies. What if we just start over again? Isn't that a novel concept? And this is, I already told you that this is like a sequel to the original Godzilla. So you have that context.
Yeah.
So all of that said, if this is a reboot and a sequel of the original movie, I have the same question that I had for Godzilla Raids Again. The end of the first movie, Godzilla's bones. So how are they going to have a return of Godzilla in 1984?
I don't know, because like the only answer that actually makes sense is that it's a different Godzilla, but I just can't imagine they do that 3 times. So at least one of these sequels, it has to be the Bones Godzilla.
What if he's just a giant bones Godzilla?
I mean, one that would be so sick. Like that would be so sick. Just like a Bowser Bones version of Godzilla. Hell yeah!
Dry Godzilla.
Yes. Oh my god, Dry Godzilla would rule. The artwork's out there. I guarantee it.
Oh, you know it. Yeah.
No, that would be awesome. That can't be it. So I really don't know. I mean, the only thing I can. If it's the same Godzilla, it somehow has to like reconstitute its flesh, and I just don't know how that would happen. So I think that I think I have. Well, hold up.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if Godzilla got like weirdly supernatural at points in its history.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say that just because this is the next one we're watching, I'm gonna say that the Return of Godzilla. I can't get specific because I don't know, but I'm going to say that the means through which Godzilla returns are supernatural in nature.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Cool. We'll see how that plays out. My other question, just like last time, do you think any other kaiju are going to show up? And if so, do you have any guesses of who?
I would say that for a movie, even though this is a sequel, if this is meant to be a reboot, I'm going to guess that no, there's not another monster in this one. I think that even though it's a sequel, it probably serves as like a, hey, everybody, like, let's get into Godzilla, like a jumping on point as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say no other monsters.
Cool. My last question, this is very open-ended. Like, I'm not fishing for anything. I'm genuinely just curious what you will think of when I ask you this. How do you think that just sort of the Godzilla story or world will be updated for the 80s?
For the 80s?
Yeah, because this is 1984, smack in the middle of the 80s.
Gosh. Well, I mean, the fact that it's 1984 is like compelling enough. I'm not really sure. Yeah, what would that look like for the 80s? I mean, it's still going to be Japan, right? Oh, hold up. This is like Cold War shit, isn't it? This is like, is this smack dab in the middle of the Cold War?
It's right during
so it's going to have something to do with that. There's just no way it doesn't. I mean, so much of this is steeped in weapons of mass destruction. Mm-hmm. I have to imagine the Cold War is in some way going to factor in, and so I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't directly involved. I have to imagine that once again America and probably Russia are like entities in this world, even if it is still Japan. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, it might be kind of what I was talking about with the movie we just discussed, where the monsters are actually the United States and Russia, and Japan is, or Soviet Union, sorry, and Japan is like kind of literally geographically stuck in the middle, but also politically in the middle of it. So I imagine that's got to have something to do with it.
I love that, like, that was your answer and not just like, they're probably going to have big hair or something like that.
Oh,
Not that I thought that you were going to say anything dumb, but it's just like, that was so insightful. And like, I love like thinking of the historical context.
I'm sure someone will have shoulder pads and the music's probably going to rip. I mean, I hope it does.
Cool. Yeah. I will say, if you're someone watching along with us who are sort of unfamiliar with it, Return of Godzilla is one of the movies that is a little bit hard to find. Like, Pluto supposedly has the rights to it now, but has not put it on demand. There's still a couple of movies that's the case for. So you will have to do a little bit of searching. You probably will have to find it illegally. If your library doesn't have it, or because I don't think it's easy to find even cheaply on disc right now. So check with your local library, and if they don't have it, hit that torrent site, man, because it's about the only way to watch it. And this is one that's good for you to know, Doug. I have the file. I'll send it to you, but this is probably good to know for you and anyone else too. This is also one where like there is an American version of it called Godzilla 1985. I want to do an episode on that in the
1985.
future.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's the year after that it comes out, right?
Yeah.
So I do an episode on that. So that's not the one we're not talking about that cut. We are talking about the Japanese cut of the 84 Godzilla movie.
It's there are copies in my library system.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
On
Oh, that
Blu-ray.
rules. I'm actually really surprised because that's not, I mean, it's not the rarest Blu-ray to find. I think it came out
Sure.
within the last decade or something, but it's like you'd have to pay like at least $50 to buy it now from.
I mean, to be fair,
website,
my
so.
specific library doesn't have it. It's just in the system. So
Sure,
that's like,
but that's still cool.
You're betting
That's
on
really-
like 30 libraries at some
That's-
point having acquired copies.
More promising than I was expecting for that movie,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Also-
for the return of Godzilla that I don't feel like most people even remember exists.
Also, I'm not looking at plot descriptions here, but I do want to point out that like the one thing I do see for the summary is with a higher budget and more advanced special effects than any previous films in the series, return ... What could that mean? The bar my expectations are now very high. Thanks, library.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh man.
Cool. Well, I'm excited
Well,
for that. I love that we're
am.
doing this. I think I've said it before, but I love that we're doing like the direct sequels kind of all first. I think that's really fun for me.
I'm just excited to get, because I love the Heisei era a lot, which is what this 80s movie starts off as.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to we don't have to wait like a year and a half to get to those if we were doing it chronologically. So
Sure.
I'm very, very excited to talk about this one because I think we're going to have a lot of really interesting conversations about this movie.
Awesome.
I mean, we had a lot of interesting conversations about this movie, despite it not really being very good. So we're just good at this, I guess. Well, if you want to find more creators being good at things,
Hell yeah.
you can find queer creators who are talking about media on the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective at glitterjaw.com. We're going to have plenty of other shows coming out, probably that are like Screonk, and there are plenty of shows that already exist on there that are like Screonk. So definitely check that out. Follow on Twitter, Facebook, and Blue Sky at Glitterjaw, and Instagram at GlitterjawPods to keep up with everything going on with that collective. But for us individually, where can we find you, Doug?
Yeah, you can find me a few places. You can find me on a Pokemon podcast called Victory Road. You can find me on a Glitterjaw podcast called Novel Gaming, where my co-host Katie and I catch up on all the media we have been consuming with a focus on books and video games typically. And Derek, you and I do a couple podcasts together. We do Walloping Web Snappers, which is a deep dive into Spider-Man cartoons. And one of those shows that's sort of related in DNA to Screonk is Falling with Style, which was a Pixar movie marathon that for the time being is like, if you're listening to this in real time, kind of on hiatus because it's going to be a while before we have Pixar movies, but there's something coming up. So check that out.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if you want to find me, I'm usually most active on Twitter at Derek Miguel. You can find me other places under that name, or Dare Bear, Mr. Dare Bear. I do, in addition to all the podcasts Doug listed that we do together, I also do a podcast with my other co-host, David, which is called Gimmicks, where we look at the high concept and experimental and structure-breaking gimmicky episodes of television. That is also part of Glitterjaw. Find that anywhere you get your podcasts. And you can find me on Twitch at Mr. Dare Bear, where I sometimes will stream VHS recordings of old television airings with the original commercials. I would also point you to our Patreon, patreon.com/wallopingwebsnappers. Obviously, that's our Walloping Web Snappers Patreon, but that's also just kind of the house for anything Doug and I do together. So if you want to support any of our projects, that's really the place to go. And I think, not sure exactly when, but at some point in the future, we do intend to do some kind of Godzilla bonus content there for that Patreon.
For sure.
Yeah, there's already plenty of other content there if you like Spider-Man stuff, but even if not, we definitely will have some Godzilla stuff coming in the near future. And check out our Walloping Web Snappers Discord as well, because we do have a Screonk channel. They're called channels, right?
Yep.
Channels? Is that what it is? Yes. We do have a Screonk channel in the Discord. You can find that link in our show notes. If you have any questions, thoughts, feedback, you can email us at screonkpodcast@gmail.com. And we would love it if you would rate, review, and subscribe to us on all your podcast platforms. Especially helps since we are still a pretty new podcast that only updates monthly. So those reviews and ratings really help us out on any platform you're on. Next month, like I said, we're moving on to the first film of the Heisei era, the first time Godzilla was fully rebooted with apparently just a much higher budget. So we're just going to have to look forward to that. Much better special effects. We'll see if we agree with that when we get to it in 1984's The Return of Godzilla.
See you there.